Historical Geography Atlas, or Irish Historical Towns Atlas numbers 1 to 25.
Okay, good morning and thank you very much. And I thought, knowing we have a very short file, that I would, in a way, get to my conclusions first, and then allow ourselves to explore some of these more fully. So, most of you, or at least lots of people here, are familiar with the Historic Towns Atlas, and what I'm trying to do this morning is to explore how it might be used in the advancement of urban historical geography in Ireland. There are, I think, 25 fascicles available in that. The Ennis one is just about published. I'm delighted to see a couple of our authors and editors here as well. So, if we take the key questions, which is how might it be used in the advancement of urban historical geography. In preparation for this, I did a little bit of literature review, spent some time going back over my own early bibliographies and some recent material, and I dare not start quoting names because that would obviously leave out some of what I've looked at, but running through, I was very conscious of the key historical geography concerns which have been coming up, recurring again and again, some of them fairly standard, and all of the big names in Irish historical geography, including Professor Duffy, who preceded me here. But starting, say, with Freeman and moving onwards, things like population, house quality, particularly using Griffiths, advances in the 19th century, progress in innovation, transport, canals, railways, changes in administration, say municipal boundaries, poor law unions, the shifts towards industrialisation in the mid-19th century, market functions, the role of landlords in land transfer, in town investment, place name study, which we've got a little introduction to already, and comparing pre- and post-famine landscapes. The other point then, sorry, just go back to that first point, which I'm making, is that the Historic Towns Atlas, I think, lends itself, in essence, to the closer exploration of some of these standard or key or traditional areas. These are issues or topics or lines of inquiry that have been, to use a phrase from Paddy, well ploughed already, and which I would argue have, much more potential in them still. I would also make a second point then, that I would consider the Atlas most useful in morphological analysis in the tradition of MRG Consen, particularly where you've got town plan, building fabric and urban land use, these three elements together, overlapping elements and complementary here. Under this heading, I've put things like reconstruction of the past landscape and modern townscape, the development of urban sectors, particularly, say, institutional sectors, or sectors devoted to Roman Catholic institutions, planned development, so more driven, and this issue of the bounding of space, which I think the Atlas, in its detail, has great potential there. And the final point I'm making in terms of how I see it being useful is through making available new sources, some of these of which would otherwise be out of bounds. Each fascicle has brought into the public domain material that nobody has seen before, for various reasons, just simply inaccessibility or not known about, and then the big effort to have really high quality illustrations, which was the reason for my PowerPoint this morning, really bringing the University Computer System down with the quality of some of the images that I have uploaded. And through its structure, which is common to all 25 fascicles, including the topographical information section, which we'll talk of in a moment, the comparability of map 2, which is the classic map, 1:2500, coloured map that all the atlases have, all the Irish atlases, and through its thrust to attach every piece of information to a real place. This kind of relentless topographical insistence, you know. Every place is attached, every piece of information is attached to a real place on the ground. So it's a topographical atlas, stating the blindingly obvious maybe, but it's when you're working on this, you realise that it's not just activities, but places where the activities happen, which can be documented and absolutely tied down. So where matters, not just when, how, why, and maybe who is involved. So, and my final point, I would push that the atlas can be used in comparative studies across published towns because of the large number we have, and there are also new areas, for example, environmental history, cultural representation, and I think other areas that you will pick up yourselves. But I'm going straight in to illustrate some of these points insofar as my time allows me. And the issue, the first point we had made was how population, one of the classic standard investigations in Irish historical geography, a kind of starting place. And the atlas itself includes population figures from censuses. Every atlas has its own compendium of statistical population figures under heading number 8 of the topographical information. It does, as well as the normal kind of census of population, it does also draw on any previous censuses, like the civil survey, or in this case, this is from Derry, which is the Raven kind of head count of 1622. So it brings back the population information insofar as the sources allow. I've mentioned in terms of housing, which is really a landmark for, I mean, when Paddy Duffy started there, you know, pinpointing houses, and everything was working around the house locations, the homes, and in urban historical geography, housing is central. Again, under heading number 9, the housing heading, we have the possibility of a compendium or a gazetteer of information brought together in a nice cohesive way, and brought together across all the atlases, a summary of the ordinance of the population census information, which I think immediately you should see yourselves lends itself to interesting analysis across towns. You have the map number 2, which I mentioned already, the standard core map of every atlas at 1:2,500, based on the manuscript town plan of that period, produced for every town, so that the Dublin one, for example, is absolutely ginormous. Maynooth is a lovely little neat size, as is, say, Armagh or, say, Carlingford. But then, say, you know, Kilkenny is getting out of hand, and then Dublin is, as I said, and Belfast are quite large. So this is the example I've taken for Trim. I've taken those topographical information sections from Trim. If you have any close questioning on this, I'd be happy to direct you to the author of the Trim Atlas, who is very appropriately sitting there, Ron Hennessy. So picking up on this, we have the Trim. What I'm illustrating here is the issue of house quality, and how traditionally the urban historical geographers have worked with evaluation surveys. They've worked with the Griffiths valuation maps, the map information and the statistical information, and that these maps themselves, based on manuscript town plans of this pre-industrial period, are ideal for this kind of close exploration. And there's an example there taken from the Trim Atlas, exploring the valuation house by house and residence by residence in the kind of traditional urban historical methodology in Ireland. We're so blessed to have it as a source, and I think we use it fairly fully. But the Griffiths valuation is not the only mappable house quality or social geography if we're using housing as a proxy for social class. And the valuation survey material is not the only material available. We have lots of other, for example, the Sherwood Brassington Green survey, and this isn't just a tiny piece taken from Kells, and we actually have the Kells author here as well, which I didn't know when I was getting this ready. So again, questions can be directed to Professor Sims. But the the possibility of mapping, because the atlas produces the raw statistical, the raw survey information, you know, house number, reproduces the actual surveys, along with the base maps, which you have the possibility of overwriting. This allows for this kind of closer, tighter investigation, and I would hope models what can be done in other towns. A nice example here would be, just comes to mind, would be taking out all the Sherwood, Brassington and Green surveys across any Irish town they're done for in that period, and comparing and contrasting, because presumably that particular company had a fairly settled methodology. Taking Kildare here and moving on to the point about administrative innovation, 19th century advances, progress and innovation in so many ways. The map 2 kind of freezes the town and captures the town just before the railways take over. The dates, of course, are different depending on the date of the manuscript town plan for that town. But they give you this moment in time just before industrialisation, which of course links up with the larger European project of which the Atlas is a part, where the map 2, or at least the map at this scale, is coloured reconstruction map, is meant to capture the town just before, as I said, the railway, the advance of the railway, and the remaking and remodelling that really changed the fabric of town centres more drastically on the continent in some cases. So, taking this example here of Kildare, a nice local example, you can see the cathedral there to the north, and then the old castle here, the two Anglo-Norman settlement, the two centres of it here. And then, just overwriting on it, you can see how every element within it can be tied to the Gazetteer of Information, and every element in the Gazetteer of Information, the topographical information, can be lined up with the individual housing. And there are the 22 headings in the listing. This is, I think, what distinguishes the Irish Historic Towns Atlas from some of the other atlases in this European project, is the effort and pain and torture invested in the topographical, in compilation of this gazetteer or topographical information. It's done because there is no other gazetteer of urban topographical information in Ireland, and that is the reason. There was nothing comparable, nothing that could be used instead. So, for example, under the heading there, religion, you have, we'll cover things like the churches, cathedrals, convents, primary production, something that may be overlooked. There's a real closeness to the physical landscape in the Historic Towns Atlas because of this, because of the use of maps and because of this particular heading, and the reproduction of so many maps, which of course show very large areas of open ground within what we would regard as the urban core. Towns are much more rural than we maybe think. Other headings there I mentioned there: education, defence, administration. These are just a fraction of the elements which could be explored more further, in this case in Kildare. Moving on to the question of bounding spaces and the emphasis the Atlas puts on the delineation of various boundaries. That's just taken from the Trim example. This is reproduction of Larcom's the municipal boundaries map of 1837, nice, very good quality reproductions, which in itself I think is a fantastic document for research. And then there is some of the reworking that's been done in this case by Stephen Royal and with the Atlas staff and Sarah Gearty, and the redrawing and the revamping and the exploration of, in this case, the built-up area at two different dates, which of course are determined by Urban Survey publications, and then the challenge in the case of Belfast for the municipal boundary to stretch, to match the built-up area and to match it in the right direction, to predict in what area, in what direction further development would be. It's a very complex story, and again a story that could be investigated in smaller, if you like, in lesser places too. Moving on to the question, this is still on administration, administrative location. in this case pinning down the Barony Civil Parish Townland Poor Law Union District Electoral Division, all the administrative units of which that town is a part, which is tying up, I think, very closely with what Paddy Duffy spoke of earlier. And in this case, the even earlier administrative divisions were perhaps rather inclined to think of administrative divisions starting with the survey mapping. In fact, we get quite a lot of students who think, I'm afraid, that the parishes came with the Ordnance Survey because they can't see parish boundaries on anything earlier. So we have to try and work backwards and see what were the real divisions, the units with which people really engaged, the places that they felt part of, the parish particularly in the town, the focus of poor relief, the locus for so many urban services. Moving then quickly to manufacturing and pick up there, these are other issues exploring between the topographical information. This is one site that's taken there, Matterson's in Limerick, random site really, but a nice one in terms of detail, being able to track the changing land use on this very substantial site, and what it's composed of, and you can see the care taken, and then the illustration, the use of, early in this case it's an 1860s illustration, to draw out what the facts of the story are, to kind of give a 3D to what can look fairly tedious listing. So in this case again, this is a similar investigation of the Derry Londonderry, and this is simply picking out shirt factories, nothing else, and locating them as closely as possible over these 3 dates. Moving on to the question of landlord status and the landlord, we take here the early part of the topographical information, lists the legal status or details the legal status of the town, say the dates of first charter, when it becomes a shire town, county town, corporation, when it got town commissioners, etc. And what parliamentary constituency was part of. Those kind of basic kind of ground figures, which moves on, which I think is more interesting when you get to proprietorial status. So you've got land, the ownership of the town itself being tracked. So in this case, I think this is Trim, yes, taken from the Archbishop of Armagh, right through to, and I have deleted loads in that, it's galloping through, literally very fast run, right to the 1640s, when we have by the 1770s, the principal proprietors. Trim is divided between the Earl of Darnley, Lord Mornington, Lady Coningsby, and the Corporation of Trim. Now this example, yes, this is Bray, and this is just showing, based on the Ordnance Survey as a ground plan there, showing the possibility of delineating land ownership, and this case dividing up between between the Meath family, the Earl of Meath, and the Fitzwilliam family, which of course explains things like Herbert Road sitting down in Bray, as well as in Dublin. So you have just one small illustration here again from Limerick, which is part of the Newtown Perry development in the 1760s here, the laying out of the new town. And of course remembering the landlord involvement in this case with the whole quayside development. It was very much speculative development with an eye to future prosperity. This is not a philanthropic venture. And a little pointer as well, in that which I'm glad we fit in here with what Paddy spoke of already, which is that the recreations of the town do have a special heading. The town is a place for fun and excitement. Now, the Cayley houses that Paddy has noted, unless the place is actually listed as a dance hall or a band hall or a clubhouse, it doesn't feature in the atlas because, as I said, there's this, if you like, very stringent demand that the place is a topographical reality. But in this case, this is really spot on, where we have not just in case of Armagh, and it fits in today with the Punchestown races being on in this county of Kildare. We have the racecourse in the city of Armagh, and you can see they've marked in the starting post and the winning post on the road map, and you have a tie-in between the map, the road map, topographical information, and an exploration of the recreations that are possible in the city of Armagh. And then obviously each atlas has its own topographical information section. Just completing on the point of streets, of place names, there is a close analysis under heading number 11, which is the street heading, the street names. And there is, in that case, sorry, that's just taken the Bishamble Street place name, first derivation, first use of that name, at least the first name recorded for that piece of street, and then every subsequent change with it. All, as you will know, closely tied to the references. The other point I want to make, which I'm just going to have to make it, and kind of hope you believe me, is the potential for the use of the atlas in Commons and type analysis. It leaves itself this kind of, plan units, super the redrawing of its imposition of the redrawing of on the present town plan of the early street plans. Conson is very keen, as you all know, on physical geography, the environmental inheritance, which I think is a particular strength of the atlas, which is open for further exploration. The point there's Maynooth, just to bring us at home here, and there's from Ireland Horner's map, which is where we are at this very moment. We're over here. We're very close. When the building next to us was this the building with the chapel, Paddy?
Here?
Yes, I was at the end corridor, the end room at the end of this corridor. The end of the corridor is the chapel. We're here in Rhetoric House. But this kind of redrawing of the reconstruction of the phases of building, individual units. The atlas is very good on these growth maps, which is in that tradition, marking, identifying original core and key phases of development. It's taken from Longford. I can't pass by the fact of Galway being in preparation, because one of the issues that comes up again is the reconstruction of early defences, early town walls, early gates, etc. And this is part of the work that's in preparation for the Galway Atlas, where in this case you have these are both the same year, and one map showing the detail of the town centre with the plan for the citadel, and then the map just showing the circuit of the walls, and then tying that in with later explorations of the same team, both in documentary sources, in the landscape itself, and in the map. Okay, I'm going to have to skip through just to come to my final point, which is a bit of a pity, but these are examples of how you can actually use in the reconstruction according to Conson. And my key point again, the concerns, I would say, are the traditional concerns. There's loads of potential there, and particularly using this close analysis, they making of new sources, the comparability of map 2, and just pointing out that some of this has already been taken on board by the people involved with the atlas. Some of them are here already. For example, there's this forthcoming text called Maps and Text, which will be out later this year, which is based on a series of 3 seminars, and you're not going to be able to read any of this, but it's evidence that this is in preparation, where we have comparing towns in section 2, which is this cross comparison that we're hoping the atlas can push forward, and then topographical, taking particular themes and following them through. So in particular, there is a seminar on the 25th of May. If anybody doesn't know about it, please feel invited as of now. 25th of May in the Royal Irish Academy, and you don't need to pay anything of that, but they do like an email to warn them of the numbers on the day, so it's very easily booked. And finishing maybe with what Matthew Stout has said, townscapes are a powerful record of the past, a key to understanding the historic forces at play, and I personally think that the Atlas, Historic Towns Atlas, could be one of the ways of really pushing this agenda forward. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Lots of really interesting questions, which I think we'll return to in the panel session on future directions in Irish historical geography.